Indiana, of course, crushed the projection last year, going 11-1. What is the projection going to look like in 2025? First, let's look back at some of the other projections that we've done with our formula. So in 2021, they were projected to go 8-4. They went 2-10, a disaster of a season. And remember, they were coming off of a very good 2020. I guess did not do all the teams in 2022, so I do not have a projection for Indiana. They went 4-8. In 23, they were projected to go 5-7. They were 3-9, so again worse than the projection, even though it was not a very good projection. Last year projected to go 6-6. They went 11-1. So obviously it's been tough to predict. I feel like with Kirk Cignetti, they're going to have some consistency now, and they're going to be, in the top half of the Big Ten. Now, does that mean 7-5, or does it mean 10-2 or 11-1? Like, that's going to be the question, but we'll see what the projection looks like. Again, here's the schedule, and this is the scale that we use. So Indiana is a tier 2 team, and this is all based off of our tier system, our tier rankings. Indiana is a tier 2 team. That means if they play a tier 3 team, that game would be in the 61 to 70% range. But if they play that game on the road, it then becomes a 50-50 game. Any other tier 2 teams that they play will also be 50-50 games. So keep that in mind. That's kind of how it works. And I like to say you can look at it like this. Basically, your 50-50 games are games where the spread's probably going to be 3, 4, 5 points, something like that. 61 to 70 games where the spread's probably going to be about a touchdown, 7, 8, 9 points in that range, 71 to 80. And then we're talking double-digit spreads, and then over 80. Those are counted as wins. Those are pretty much guaranteed wins. And you've got 4 of them if you're Indiana. You've got Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, and Purdue. They should roll in all 4 of these games. I realize Purdue's a rivalry game, but boy, it would take a lot for this Purdue team to get competitive in a game like this from where they were last year. Maybe they do. Maybe they shock us all like Indiana did last year, but I don't really see that happening. So I think these are 4 wins you can pretty much guarantee for Indiana. And then you've got Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, and Wisconsin. These are the games in the blue. These are the games where you feel pretty good. You feel like Indiana should win these games, but upsets happen and you never know. So they could possibly, like if there's a big upset this season, and if Indiana falls victim to that, it's going to be more than likely one of these 4 games. That would be, the big upset on their schedule. So looking at those 4 games as games that, again, Indiana should win. They're probably going to be double-digit favorites, but you don't want to take it for granted. They could lose potentially one of those games. And then you've got Oregon and Penn State. These are games where I think Indiana is a clear underdog. Oregon and Penn State are both tier 1 teams, plus these games are on the road, so it's going to be tough for Indiana in these 2 matchups. That's in that 30-39% range. I think they'll probably be... It's hard to say because I really don't know how good Indiana's going to be. I don't know if they're going to have a drop-off or they're going to be as good as last year. If they are similar to what they were last year, they're probably about a 6 or 7 point underdog in these games. Now, Indiana could have a big drop-off. They might not be even anywhere close to where they were last year. And then these are probably double-digit spreads, and you should really put them more in the orange. But these are going to be tough matchups, no doubt about it. Again, looking at Oregon and Penn State, both on the road. Potentially the 2 best teams in the Big Ten, the 2 teams that did play for the Big Ten Championship last year. I would say they have maybe fewer questions, especially Penn State, than Ohio State. Oregon, they do have a quarterback question there, so we'll see. But Oregon and Penn State going to be tough ones for Indiana to win, and those games are in the yellow. And then you've got Illinois and Iowa, so we'll get rid of the bye weeks there, and you've got Illinois and Iowa. Those are your 50-50 games. Those are the games that really could go either way. Illinois is also a tier 2 team, so of course if you're playing a team in the same tier, that's going to be a 50-50 game. Iowa is a tier 3 team, but that game is on the road. That's why it's a 50-50 game. I really feel like both of those are probably toss-ups at this point. I maybe would favor Indiana. Again, it's hard to judge what this Indiana team is going to look like. It's hard to predict that. So yeah, these are both 50-50 games. So if let's say they lose to Oregon and they lose to Penn State, and then they split these 2 games, that'd get you to 9-3. 9-3 would be the projection, and that's exactly what it is. But that could come in a number of different ways. Maybe they get a win against Oregon or Penn State, and they slip up and they lose to Maryland on the road, or they lose to Michigan State. Something like that could happen as well. Again, when you average all this out, you do get a 9-3 projection for Indiana. I think that's fair. Again, it's going to be tough for them to beat Oregon and Penn State on the road. It just is. and then winning the rest of the games. I think that's going to be tough as well. So I feel like this is a pretty fair projection. Should be fairly accurate. I could see it. You see them going 10-2 or 8-4. Again, I do think they're going to have a little bit more consistency with Curt Cignetti. They brought in another great transfer portal class, and again, this Indiana team should be at least in the mix in the Big Ten. Will they actually get to the Big Ten championship game? I think it's going to be tough, but I think they'll at least be in that conversation in 2025. So where does Indiana stack up with some of the other top teams in the Big Ten? Well, they're right there at 9-3 again, same as Michigan and same as Ohio State. So they're really benefiting from that easier schedule to get into this conversation. If Indiana had a really tough schedule, that projection would probably be 8-4. But an easier schedule does get them to 9-3, same as Michigan, same as Ohio State, which means they're not far away from these top teams, Oregon, Penn State, and even Illinois at 10-2 because of their easier schedule. So actually, Illinois would have an easier schedule than Indiana because these are both Tier 2 teams. So that is quite interesting there. If you think Indiana's schedule is easy, Illinois is even easier. But again, should be in the top 6, 7, 8, I would think, in the Big Ten. And again, maybe in the mix to get to the Big Ten championship game in 2025.